Hey guys, Jason Timothy here, and in this video I'm going to show you at least 101 Ableton 11 tips. So the way I'm going to start off this video is by showing you how to get your automation, because it's a little different in Ableton 10 and this version Ableton 11. So what you need to do to be able to see your automation is you're going to need to turn off this keyboard icon up here, and this icon here allows you to play MIDI notes into your computer. So whether you're programming drums or synths, you want this on when you're recording any type of MIDI. But this needs to be turned off first in order for us to get our quick key of A, which turns on our automation. And then once the automation's on, you can go ahead and turn this back on. And you could actually use the M key to turn this MIDI keyboard back on. So I'm first going to show you the basic cut, copy, paste, duplicate, and delete. So there's a few different ways to do this. So the first way that you can make a cut in audio is you could just highlight a certain amount. And by the way, down here is the resolution of each of these squares here. So right now, each of these represent a quarter of a note. If I come up here to the top with this magnifying glass, click and then drag down, I can get closer, and this resolution will also get closer and closer. Okay, so the first way that I could cut and drag is just to highlight a certain section and then drag it over. So you want to make sure that when you're doing edits that you are grabbing all the way up here to the title. That way when you do your cut, copy, and paste, it's pasting the clip. If you just highlight down here, let me give you an example here. I'm going to just click a few things for automation. If I just highlight down here and copy, which is Command C, and paste Command V, if you're using a PC, you're going to use Control every time I say Command. But as you can see, we only copied the automation and not the clip. If we highlight all the way to the title, we get both. So if we want to duplicate, we would simply highlight our section, Command D, and that will duplicate the clip. If we want to undo, we just Command Z. If we want to delete a part, we just highlight that section and hit the delete key, or Command X. If we want to deactivate but keep the actual part, we would highlight that part and then click 0. And that'll deactivate it, so it's not playing, but you can still see it. And then if you want to hit 0 again, you can turn that back on. Now another way to edit is to just put your cursor on a place that you want to cut and hit Command E, and that will make a cut. If we want to make two cuts like this, we simply just highlight the section, and when we hit Command E, it will make an edit on both sides. Pretty simple. Another way that we can make a quick edit is we can highlight an area, and then you get this little hand tool. You just click and slightly drag down and then let go, and it'll make that without having to do any keyboard shortcuts. Once again, if I want to copy this elsewhere, I just click on this, Command C to copy, and then I can bring it over, Command V to paste. Now let's say I have a few different clips that are kind of spread apart like so, but I want them to all kind of act like one clip, so I don't have to constantly highlight all of them to make movements and things like that. What you can do is you can just highlight them once, hit Command J, once again Control J if you're using a PC, and that will consolidate all of the files. So now this is just one clip instead of separate clips, and then you can kind of move it however you want. Movement's really simple. You could just click and drag left or right, and you could also drag to another audio track here. You won't be able to drag into a MIDI clip though. So if I just real quickly create a MIDI clip with Command Shift T and try to drag it in, it's going to try to convert it to a MIDI clip instead of audio. By the way, if you want to create an audio track, it's just Command T. Now with an audio track, I can drag my audio anywhere that I want into any track, all right? Just by clicking and dragging. So duplicating and copying doesn't just work on clips, it kind of works all across the board. So if I want to duplicate this audio track, for example, I just hit Command D while I click on the title here. And there we go, we've duplicated the track. Obviously, if I want to undo that, I hit Command Z. Also, you can edit your effects here. So if I come over here to my effects, for example, I could just click on the title here, and delete will obviously delete the effect. I can undo that. I could duplicate the effect, and I could copy and then paste elsewhere. The way you get a MIDI instrument into a MIDI track is really simple. You just come up to your browser here and choose your instrument. And you could either choose a default or you can choose a preset. And you could either drag it on here on the track itself, or you can click on the track you want and then drag it down into this window here. And now you've got this operator instrument on your MIDI track. Now, if you want effects, effects go after your instrument. So you would just go to your audio effects. And if we wanted, let's say, a reverb, we could come in here to reverb and resonance, pull a reverb, and just drag it right after. To get audio in, you could simply go to your audio track here and find your sample folder. You may have a separate sample folder like I do here as well. These are samples that come with Ableton Suite, and here I've kind of got my collection of samples. So all I have to do is just find the sounds that I'm looking for. Let's say a bass drum or something like that. I can browse it by turning on the speaker. And anytime you see the speaker in any part of Ableton, you can turn it on or off to monitor and preview sounds. So if I drag that in, now we have audio in here. You could do the same thing with loops. If I wanted to pop a loop in there, I could just listen to a loop. If I like it, I could drag it right in. And by default, Ableton will automatically match short loops to whatever tempo you're in. You could also bring audio or video into Ableton from outside the program. So if you've got something on your desktop, you could just simply drag it right in. And there you go. You've got the audio inside that way as well. So another command is Command A, and what this does is collect all of a certain thing. So for example, we're in the clip window here. So if I just click on one clip and then hit Command A, once again, Control if you're using a PC, as you can see, it selects all of the clips. So I could then grab and move them all together if I wanted to. You could also select, let's say, click on one of your effects and select all that's in a track if you wanted to delete it for some reason or whatever. You can come into a MIDI track. So just double click on a MIDI track and you could select one MIDI note here. And as you see here, we've got this speaker icon. So this allows you to hear that you click on, like so. So if we come here and we click Command A, it'll select everything. So if we wanted to delete everything, I just hit the delete key, right? Undo. And with MIDI, MIDI works the same as with clips. If I wanted to, I can highlight and Command D to duplicate. I could click on something to delete. I can copy something here, put the cursor somewhere else, and paste everything in. So all of those commands work the same in MIDI as well. So next we have the tab key. This window here is called the arrangement window, which works more linear. If you hit the tab key, this brings you over to the session window that kind of works with clips. And the next tip I have for you is related to using clips. So if you've got different scenes here, scenes are these things over here, right? And that's just a collection of clips. So you could almost think of each scene as like a different section of a song that you're building. So this could be an intro, this could be a verse, this could be a chorus, a breakdown, and an outro, or whatever you want. Or you could just have different combinations of things that you think sound cool as you're trying to work out where you want your song to go. But a cool feature to create new scenes is you could be playing with different parts. So let's just, I'll play this here and this. So let's say I like this combination right here, right? But they're all in different scenes. What I could do is, while they are chosen and while they're playing, I just hit Command-Shift-I and it'll create a whole new scene with just those clips that I've highlighted. And there you go. Now it's created a whole new scene with just those clips. So if you want to turn off a clip that's playing, you just hit any of these stop buttons on a track and it'll stop that clip. If you want to stop all the clips, what you want to do is you want to come all the way over to this button right here on the master, and that'll turn off all the clips. Now when we're playing clips here in the session window, if I switch back over to the arrangement window by hitting tab, you'll notice that everything's grayed out here. What that means is that Ableton's no longer playing the sound from this window. It's playing these clips over here because these are using the same tracks. So in order to make sure that you're playing here in the arrangement window, you want to come up here and this orange button right here, if you click that, it'll switch everything back to playing what you've got here in the arrangement window. So if you want to select several tracks to edit all of them the same way, you could click, hold down Shift, and then click the other track. And as you can see now, all three of these are highlighted. Now anything I do to one, for the most part, will be done to all three. So if I want to lower the volume on one, as you can see, it also lowers the volume on all of them, okay? If I want to turn up send or return, it'll do that to all three of them. If I want to solo all the tracks, I just click solo and there we go. Now, unless you're recording like multiple tracks at the same time, like mic'd up drummer or several singers or a whole band, you don't normally need to do this. But as you notice, when you highlight three instruments and hit the arm button, it will arm all of them. Now, if you don't have several tracks highlighted at the same time, let's just undo that. You'll notice that you can only arm one track at a time. In order to change that so you could select several tracks, you just hold down the Command key or the Control key if you're using a PC, and as you can see, you can select more than one track. You could also do the same in this window here. If you highlight several tracks and you want to turn up a send, as you can see, we'll turn them all up. If you want to change the volume level, as you can see, it will move all of them the same amount. If you want to solo, if you want to mute the tracks, all of that is possible with several tracks at the same time. So it just makes things really easy. You're going to notice here with the cursor is when I play here, as you can see, the cursor is going to move off the screen and I have to follow where the cursor goes. And it's the same down here with the Midi. If we want to change that, all we got to do is hit Command-Shift-F. And now the cursor will always remain in the middle. If you want to sidechain something to your kick drum, that's pretty easy to do. So we just have this hi-hat here. And we want this sound to duck every time the kick hits. So we've got the kick sitting here. So all we have to do is come into that track And I'll just come over to the end here and drag a compressor right into here. And then all I got to do is click this upside down triangle, choose Sidechain, and then audio from, you just pick the track, which is our kick machine. And then we usually want the ratio to be pretty high. You could actually take it all the way up if you want. And then attack really quick. Release time somewhere around 150 to 200, I think it works pretty good. But if you want it faster, you can make that faster as well. And then you just bring down the threshold. And when the kick plays, you'll notice this will lower in volume. Right? If I turn it off, if I solo this by itself, you'll be able to hear it a little bit better. As opposed to. So that's how you sidechain in Ableton. If you want to create a sidechain effect without using a compressor, you just simply double click on the clip. You're going to come over here to the automation tab, all right, and set this to, let's just set this to gain on the utility. The utility is just this effect right here. So this can control gain as well as over here controlling the volume. So once you're in here, all you've got to do is figure out your resolution. So let's say we just kind of want every quarter note, all right? So this is a quarter note here. We could actually right click and change this to quarter note if we want. And that way we know that this section right here is a quarter note. So I'm just going to click right here and then click on the line here, bring that down. And then we could just highlight and duplicate this. You could also choose unlinked loop here, and then you could create like an automation loop. So all you got to do is just make one of those quarter notes there, and it will just keep repeating that automation all the way through your whole clip. Now, if you want to save CPU, because let's say you've got a lot of effects running, not that this is really that many effects, but if we wanted to save CPU on this, we could right click on the track or any track and go to freeze. What this will do is it'll freeze the track. And this will still allow it to sound exactly the same. However, you're just not going to be able to change the effects and things like that. You could still change the volume level and the panning over here. You're just not going to be able to affect anything in here. And if you wanted to make a change, you would just right click, unfreeze, and make your edits, and then you could refreeze the track. Now, another cool thing about freezing a track is if we create an audio track here, and once again, I just created the audio track by hitting Command T. Then what I could do is take this clip, highlight the whole clip if I want, and I could either drag it in, which removes it from here, and as you can see, it creates audio. Or I could copy and paste it so I could keep both. Now, another thing you could do is you could highlight and then hold down the Alt key while you drag. And that'll make a copy as well. Now, as I showed you before, if you use the magnifying glass, you can come in and change the resolution or come up and change the resolution. You could also right click over here and choose your resolution specifically, but there's also shortcut keys to doing that as well. So Command 1 is going to make the resolution half the size. Command 2 will double it. So as we go up or we go back down, and it has a limit to its resolution because adaptive. But let's say I just had this set to 1 bar here. Then the 1 will keep on going lower and lower in resolution, as you can see. And you could bring the resolution 4 bar, 8 bar, 16 bar, and so forth. So that's just the Command 1 and Command 2 key. If I want a triplet, I just hit Command 3, and now I've got quarter note triplet. So each of these squares here, if I come in a little closer, that's the length of a triplet, all right? And you can turn that off just by hitting Command 3 again. If you want to turn off the grid so that you can move something more incrementally, if I move this clip, it's going to move it by the resolution. If I want to move it more incrementally, I just hit Command 4. That turns off the grid, and now I can move it anywhere in between the grid as well. And that's the same for Midi as well over here. So let's just pull some of this out real quick. This is going to move by resolution. If I hit Command 4, it'll turn off the resolution so that I can drag anywhere in between. Or I can use the left or right arrows to do incremental movements. And that's the same here with the clip. I can just right arrow, left arrow to do incremental movements. If you hit the B button, the icon will turn from this cursor to a pencil tool. That actually can make for kind of like step automation. If I go to volume, I could change the volumes just one step at a time by hitting the B key. And as you can see, it will go with whatever resolution increment that I would like, as opposed to the cursor where you're kind of making movements like this. Also, while we're on the subject, you can use the Alt key, and right in the middle here, you can drag and it'll create a curve, either up or down. If I highlight over automated area here and hit delete, it'll just remove that automation. So if I hold down the B key, it'll just temporarily give me the pencil tool. When I let go, it goes back to cursor. If I click the B key real quick, then it will go to the pencil tool and it'll stay that way until I hit the B key again. Now, if you want to tune your drums, there's a couple approaches you can take. So let's just come over here to our hi-hat. We'll solo this, and I'm just going to hit Command L. That will create a loop around it. So this way we'll just keep looping. Or you can just click right here. This is also looping here, okay? So we've got our hi-hat. And if I want to tune that, one approach I can take is to come over to our EQ. And then I'm going to click this triangle and it'll kind of create this area. And over here in this area, you'll notice it shows us the note or the frequency that I'm hovering over, right? So if I know that the part is an E, I can come over to, let's say, E3. Well, first we're going to see kind of where our sound is. So our sound's up here. So if we want an E, we've got it right here. So I could drag this over to an E note, which is around 2.6 kilohertz. And then I could turn that up. And then I can tighten the Q here. And the more I bring that up, the more we're going to enhance that particular note. And we could also add another frequency higher. And once again, we'll make a short Q by turning that up. And come over here to another E. We'll back that off just a little bit. And that's one way that you can tune your drums. You can also tune your drums another way using another tool, and that is with the frequency shifter. Drag that in, and with it as a default here, we can just choose the fine tune, or we could choose more of a coarse tuning. So down here we have return tracks, okay? And return tracks can have any effect or any collection of effects that we would like to have. Typically we would use this for reverb, for delay, maybe a little saturation or something like that. And each one of these correlates to each one of these. So as you can see, we have 4 different returns and we have 4 different sends right here. Also, if you hit the tab key, you'll notice that we've got 4 sends here. If I create a new return track, you'll now see that we have 5 sends. And if I come over here, we have 5 sends over here. And then I could drag whatever effect I want into there. So we'll use the kick drum as an example. I just turn up that send and it runs it through the return. If I want to set it to a little delay, so as you can hear, that will affect your sound. So this is a great way if you've got like one sort of reverb that you want to add to several tracks. This will also save CPU, and also you can control the amount on each track. If you want to create a MIDI clip, all you have to do is highlight the section you want, hit Command Shift M, and there you go, you've got a MIDI clip. All right, now if you want to step record in MIDI, that's pretty easy to do as well. So what you would do is just set your cursor where you want the note to be, and then you could play your chords. So let's just hold that down and then hit the right arrow key, and there we go. Now the cursor is ready for another set of notes here, or we can change where we want it, or we can use the right arrow key to move, and then there we go. If you want to assign a knob, like any of these, if you want to assign a parameter to a MIDI controller, what you're going to do is come over here, click on MIDI, and pretty much anything that you see, you can assign to a knob or a fader or a button. So all you have to do is click on the parameter you want, then twist the knob that you want to assign it to, and then it will be assigned. You go ahead and turn the MIDI back off. If you want to assign anything to like an on and off button or switch, you can actually come to key if you want to use a QWERTY keyboard. And let's say I wanted to turn this operator on and off for some reason. I just click on the button. I click the key that I want to use, so I'll just use the 1. Turn the key off. And now I can turn the operator on and off. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to make sure that you always stay in key or in the correct scale when you're writing melodies or what have you. So the easy approach is start with the C and just click on all the white notes going all the way up. We'll turn this speaker on so we can hear each note. And then we're back to C. So then all we have to do is we'll use this magnifying glass, and if we scroll to the left, we can make this smaller. And I'll come a little bit bigger so I can see the separation. And then all I got to do is hold the Alt key and click, and then I can drag up, make sure that bottom note is on the C. We'll go ahead and turn off the speaker now. And once again, hold down the Alt key, bring it up. So you can do this with a few octaves, depending on how many octaves you want your melody to be. And now you've got the key of C. Now, if you want to change the key to, let's say, a C sharp, you just hit Command A and just the up arrow. And every time you go up, take a look at the bottom note, and that is going to be the scale. All right, so it's going to work all the way up. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to put this behind our loop marker. So we're just going to highlight everything by hitting Command A and then the left arrow. And as you can see, now we put these behind. And then all we have to do is hit Fold. And now it's only going to show us notes that are in that specific key. So the second way to do scales is with Ableton 11's new scale tool, which is very easy to use. So you simply come over here to the clip area on your clip properties and click on scale. And then you can choose what scale you want. So let's say we want to be in the key of E, we'll go E minor. As you can see here in the pink, it shows all the notes in that scale. If we only want to see the notes in the scale, we just click the scale button here, and now anything will be within the correct scale. All right, next let's get into warping. So over here, if you're warping a track, you'll notice all these gray little arrows, and these are noticing different transients in your song. So when you're warping a track, what I find the easiest thing to do is figure out what the first 4 beats are, basically the first bar. So there we go. So this would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? So I know that this is going to be the start of the second bar. And this gets us closer, and then we kind of do the same thing on the next. All right. And we keep doing this until it starts to tighten up our beat. There we go. Looks like it's starting to line up now. So then we could just use the speaker with the metronome. Then we can correct any place that we find it off. And you notice over here it's just slightly off, so I'm just going to move it. Keep coming over. Check the speaker. All right, great. So that would be a warp track. So now that we got the basics down, let me show you just a couple shortcuts here. If you have a warp marker that's yellow, you can hit Shift, and you can actually move the waveform around. Now, if you have a gray marker, you can hit Shift and move the marker itself. Now, let's say you want to change the location of this drum hit right here, but you don't want to affect the rest of the song. What you could do is hit the command button, control if you're on a PC, and now you can move between those without affecting the outside, and it'll create 3 warp markers for you. Now, if you want to warp multiple tracks at the same time, that's completely possible. Maybe you're working on a full song and you need to correct all the tracks in the song. First off, all the files have to be the same length. So if they're not the same length, what you want to do, let's just say that this one's here, this one's here, so they're all different lengths, right? Highlight the tracks all the way past the longest track. And now that you've done that, what you're going to do is Command J or Control J if you're using a PC, and you want to consolidate all of these tracks. So now that the files are, so the next thing you want to do is choose the tracks that you want to warp together. My recommendation is the drum track is going to be the last track that you want to choose. Anything that's going to be easier for you to warp. So let's just say this top one is the one with the most drums. What I would do is I would highlight the first one, hold down Command, select my next one, and then select my drum track last, because that's going to be the one that you're using as a warp reference. Now, obviously this is already warped, but what I can do is as I drop warp markers and move things around, you'll notice that those markers are dropped on every other track as well. So any movements and corrections that you make will be made on all the tracks. All right, so this is a quick tip on controlling envelopes on a loop using the warp functions here. So here, let's change the tempo here. All right, so let's say I really like the groove, but it's just taking up too much space because this is like just an added part to an already full rhythm. What I can do is I can come in here And while warping is on, you want to set your algorithm to beats, and then you want to choose transients. And then this here, you want to choose this top option here with just a single arrow. And now, as you drop this, you're reducing the envelope length or the decay time of every transient. Let me show you how that sounds. You can do this with any sound that has transients, but it works really well on drums and percussion. All right, so let's say you want to DJ with Ableton and you're using the session window. So this would represent deck 1 and this would represent deck 2. This would be the song you're playing on track 1 and this would be the song you're playing on deck 2. So in order to make this work, you need to have the ability to cue your song in a way where you can listen to something that's not coming out the main speaker. So the way that you do this is, now normally you would have a sound card that has more than 2 outputs. Right now we only have a stereo output. So for this example, I'm going to use left and right. So that means what's going on in the right speaker is going to go out the master. What's going out the left speaker is going to go into my headphones. Now, once I've set these up separately, so the cue out and the master out are on different channels, then I can come down here to click solo, and you'll see that it now says cue, and you'll see that these right here that before said solo are now little headphones. So now, if you're playing this track, and you want to cue this track, you would just hit the cue button here, and then that would be sent to your headphones, considering your headphones are plugged into the correct cue output. And then you could just switch between the two as you DJ back and forth. So let's say you have a song, 20 plus tracks, and you want to extend this part. You want to double this part to the song, but you want to leave everything else the same. So normally what you would have to do if you're doing this manually is you'd have to highlight all your tracks, and then you'd have to drag it over to give it enough space, and then you would have to highlight all these tracks and then duplicate it, and then you can move this back like so. In Ableton, there's a lot easier way to do that. All you have to do is remember anything that you want to do with your edits, you just add the shift key and you can do it to the whole song. So all you have to do is highlight any section of any song. So let's say we wanted to double the length of this. We just highlight that there and then Command Shift D to duplicate. And now we've just added every track here. We've doubled it up all the way across and added the space automatically. You could do the same thing by cutting part of a song in half. You could highlight this, Command Shift X. And if I wanted to move that section to another part, I can bring it over here, Command Shift V, and so forth. If you want to group tracks, you just click on the tracks that you want, hold the Command key, and then hit Command G, and that'll put all those tracks into one group. So now with the group track, you could add any effects you want to the whole group. You can also group instruments and effects. So say we've got a chorus, an EQ, and so forth. If we like this setup, we could just click on the last effect, hold down Shift, click on the first instrument, or if you're just grouping effects, just the first effect, and then Command G. Once again, Control G if you're using a PC. And now you've got it all grouped. If you click this button here, you can name this operator synth 1, whatever you want to call it. And then you could save this into your presets here by clicking the floppy disk. And that will show up in your instrument racks right here. So let's say we want to create an instrument with several of our favorite presets so that we can choose between them real quickly when we drag the instrument in. What we can do is we can start by dragging one of our presets in. Then we're going to hit the Command G to group it. That puts it into the group. And then what you want to do is just click this where you see the 3 lines. And this shows you where the instrument lives. Now we can drop more of the presets in here. So now I have 5 of our favorite presets, but we don't want them to play all at the same time. We want to be able to choose between them. So what we're going to do is click on Chain here, and we're going to highlight all of these. Just hold down Shift, and that highlights all of them. And then I'm going to drag this all the way out. And then I'm going to come up here and right click and distribute equal ranges here. So now this right here selects the different presets. So what we want to do is we want to assign this to a macro. So if we click on here, it'll show us macros. We just right click on this cursor here and we can assign it to macro 1. And now this says change selector. So now, as you can see, we can select between the different sounds. So if I play a sound, there's first preset, second preset, third, fourth, fifth. You could also create a drum selector. So let's say right here in C1 we want all of our kick choices. We can just select or highlight all the kicks that we want. So let's say we want all of these as options. We could take this and hold the command key and drag in here. Now as you can see, we have all the kicks available here. Once again, we don't want them all playing at the same time, or that's going to make a whole lot of noise. So what we'll do is we'll come to chain. I'll click the top here. Now I can either highlight and go to the bottom, or I can just hit Control A for all. That'll select all of these. And now we come here and we drag all this across, right click, distribute ranges equally, and then right click on here, select macro 1, and now we've got our chain selector, and now we can choose which kick we want to use. So let's say you've got 2 drum sounds playing at the same time, a certain rhythm, but you want them to kind of flam against each other, sound a little bit more like a human live sort of percussion playing. So let me show you what it sounds like now. So they're both just playing at the same time, and we want it to just be a little bit more random. So what I'm going to do is drag this clip into the groove pool, and then I'm going to grab it from the groove pool and drag it back onto the clip. So now we just applied this groove, which is nothing right now. But as we change the random, you'll notice more of a flam in these sounds instead of them playing exactly at the same time. Like so. Here's a tip to enhance pretty much all your bass sounds. So we've got this bass right here. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of everything below 100 hertz. So I'm just going to turn this on, and this gets rid of all that low end. All right, and then we're going to create a second track with an operator instrument. And typically by default, you're going to have the sine wave and this turned all the way up. That's pretty much all you need to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy our Midi and then paste it into this new track here. So then we'll just give this a listen here. And this is too high, so we're going to just highlight all of our notes, just Command A, and then Shift and the down arrow will bring down a couple octaves. There we go. Now that's the pocket that we're looking for. So once we have that, if we want, we can turn on an EQ and get rid of everything above 100 hertz. That way these two don't interfere. And then when you play them together, you're going to have a much meatier sound. And you can adjust the subfrequencies to your taste. All right, next is reverse reverb, and we got this vocal sound here. All right, great. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this, hit the R key for reverse. And that's going to reverse the sample. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add reverb to the reverse sound. So let's go ahead and turn on some reverb. We've got about 7.5 seconds of decay here, and we got the wet dry set up to 50%, and this is what that sounds like. Nice long tail, and then all we got to do is just freeze this track. Then we'll come over and flatten the track. And now we've got this all printed. Now I can get rid of this cut right here, the freeze tail, and you'll see why, because once we hit R to reverse it, we can just pull that over here. And now we've got our reverse reverb. All right, so if you're using an impulse drum instrument here and you've got a part, and you want to be able to affect the, let's say the snare separately, like add a reverb or something, here's how you would approach that. You just create an audio track here. With your inputs, you're going to choose that track impulse, and then here underneath, you can see here, you've got all the choices of all the sounds in that kit. So I'll just grab the snare here, set monitor to in, we'll solo this so you can hear it. And now you'll notice the snare is going to be affected by any effect that's on this audio track. Macros are a really important feature in Ableton, and what it is you'll notice that these are knobs that can affect different parameters across your whole instrument or effect chain. For example, with this instrument example here, as a change to macro, I get different results. So the way that this works is, as you see all these green dots, these are all things that have been mapped. So for example, if I wanted to add another effect here, let's just add auto filter. And just to make this easier to see, I'll just drag it over here. And now what I could do is, let's say I want to affect the cutoff frequency, so I'll click here, and I'll assign this to macro 9, and I'll also assign the Q to macro 9 as well. So now both of these are being affected equally. So then I could come over here and I could find my auto filter right here, frequency, so I could control the amount of the frequency and the amount of auto filter resonance. So let's bring this resonance down here, and we'll bring this down to max here, and we'll put our minimum up a little bit higher. There we go. So once I get out of that, and then you could come over here and name this, so we'll just call this filter. And now I've just created, as you can see, a knob that affects two different parameters. So that's macros. If you want to record clips into the arrange window over here, all you got to do is just set your cursor where you want to start the recording, come over here and hit record. And I like to give myself a longer count in when I'm doing this, so I'm giving myself an 8 count. I'll go ahead and hit record here, and then I can play any clip or I can launch any scene over here. So I'll just do this randomly. And then once I'm done, hit the tab key, and as you can see, I've just recorded all that over here. If I want to see everything clearly, I just click over here, and now everything I did here is in the arrange window. So let's say you've got this melody here. But what you really want are just these two notes here, and you want the note to extend past the loop point. The way that you approach that is just to come to the end of the last note at the loop and just pull it across that loop point, and then do the same thing with the first note. And now when you play it, you'll notice that it'll extend all the way through. On any audio track, you can choose what you want your audio to come from. So you can pull in audio from any other track that you would like, or you can select resampling, which I've shown you in this video already. Or if you've got a sound card with multiple inputs, you can select external in, or you can come down and select no input at all. You could do the same here with output. Most of the time you want to come through the master, but if you want to send this through another track kind of as a bus, you can do that as well. And then once again, with external out, you can configure if you've got multiple outputs, and you can send it to separate outputs on your sound card. Any parameter can be adjusted as an envelope, whether it be volume or a parameter on any effect. You would just click the particular parameter, and then you come over here and you're adjusting that. As you can see over here, it changes what parameter you're working on. To draw, you just simply single click with the cursor, single click again, and then you can move wherever you would like. If you hold the shift button, it will make smaller increments to make it easier to fine tune. If you highlight a section and hit shift, you can move all of it at once. If you want to create more of a curvature here, you just hold the Alt key, and then you could put a bend in your automation. Now, if you hit the B key and use your pencil tool, then you can do incremental automation as well. So a dummy clip is a really cool way to route a part through automated effects on another track. We'd come over and we just grab a sample. I'm just going to grab a loop here. And it doesn't matter what we grab because we're not going to actually use the content in here. So we could go ahead and turn the gain all the way down. And then what we can do, we could turn on different effects, like let's say a saturator and a drum bus and delay. So what we can do is we can start with the wet dry all the way down on these. And then we can automate each of these parts. So let's go ahead and automate the wet dry here. So I just clicked on that, and then I can come in here. And if I come over here, as you can see, the drum bus wet dry is already selected, and I can do something like this, create like an interesting automation. Come back over to my drive, and I can adjust the amount of drive going on here. And just let's come in here, and yeah, we'll just do the wet dry here with the ping pong delay. So I'll hit the wet dry and come back over to the clip, double clicking on it, and I'll just create a ramp kind of coming up. And now what I can do is I could take this kick track, send the master to this minimal loop, and to make this easy, we could just rename this to dummy clip. We'll set this to solo, and then set our monitor to in here. And now when I play this part, we're going to be sending the audio through here. And now, when I click on this dummy clip, it will start the automation. like so forth. And that's a very simple automation, but you can do very complex things with the dummy clip. Creating a kick drum with operator is pretty easy. So what we're going to do here is first we're going to drop in some quarter notes here. And it doesn't matter what note that we're hitting right now. We'll just put 4 quarter notes here. We've just got this little loop here, so I'll just solo this. And what we want to do here is we could keep this on a sine wave. That's a general good start. And we can turn off these other oscillators. Come to the envelope. We're going to make a quick attack, a somewhat fast release. Like so. Click on fixed here and select a frequency. $70 sounds good to me. And then we can set our decay. And then what we're going to want to do is come over here to our pitch envelope, turn that on, and then create a really quick pitch envelope. So right now it's going to sound kind of like a laser-ish sound. So what we want to do is back off the decay, adjust to taste, and that's going to give us our transient, the little click in the beginning. And we can adjust how strong that is by backing off the pitch envelope if we want. And there you have a kick drum. You could go ahead and add effects or whatever to further process the sound. So now some quick EQ tips. If it's not a sub bass or a kick drum, generally speaking, remove everything below 120 hertz. You could actually remove higher if it doesn't affect the sound. If your sound still sounds muddy, you go ahead and find that mud between 200 and 650 hertz. Raise this, turn back your Q off, find where the mud is, and then take the gain, back it off, and you'll usually end up with a cleaner sound. If you want to move your MIDI around, you can just use your arrow keys to go up, down, side by side. If you hold down the shift key and hit the down or up arrow, that's going to raise or lower it by an octave. If you hit the shift button and tab, you switch between the effects view and the MIDI or audio clip view. Any parameter that has an arrow, by clicking on it, it'll return it to 0. It'll work here. If you got some panning going on, you can just click it and it'll hit back to 0. If you want to zoom into any part of your arrangement, highlight the area you want. Make sure that the MIDI keyboard icon is turned off, and then hit the Z key. If you want to expand or reduce the size of your tracks, simply hit the Alt key and any of the arrows, and that'll open all of them up or close all of them at the same time. If you want to extend the length of your MIDI clip with your keys, you simply highlight it, shift, and then left or right. To create a new return track, simply hit Command, Alt, and T. If you want to change the warp settings to multiple audio tracks, just simply highlight all the audio tracks you want to affect, and then you can just come in here and change to a different parameter. And now, as you'll see, all these parts are on Complex Pro. If you ever want more control over a sampler and you're in a simpler instrument, you could simply right-click and switch from simpler to sampler. And now you have far more options to work with. Shortcut key to zoom in is just to put your cursor where you want to zoom, hold shift, and then the plus or minus arrows. If you want to turn on and off this info area, obviously you've got this here, but you can also use shift question mark. Command Alt B will hide your browser or show it. Command Alt O will show or hide your arrangement in the session window, and you can enlarge that here as well. Command Alt I will get rid of your ins and outs or bring them back. Command Alt S will get rid of your sends or bring them back. Command Alt M will get rid of your mixer or bring it back. Shift and drag on any knob will make finer increments of movement. Command R will allow you to rename anything that has text on it. Command and up arrow will double the loop length. Down arrow will divide it in half. If you have a MIDI note selected, Alt up and down will move to your next MIDI note. Any selected note will be launched by hitting the return or enter key. If you hold down the shift key and you're on a breakpoint, you will be able to move through other breakpoints to the next. If you played in a melody or drum part a little bit sloppy, you can hit Command Shift U and it'll bring up your quantize settings. If you already know your quantize settings and you're happy with that, you could just hit Command U and it'll correct any notes that you've selected. If you want to sidechain all your tracks to your kick drum, simply highlight all the tracks besides your kick drum track. Command G to group, and then you could go about dropping in a compressor on the group track, coming in here, assigning your sidechain to your kick drum, set your threshold amount and ratio and attack and release settings, and you are ready to go. In order to keep more control over your final mix, a good idea is to do all your automation with a utility instrument and work with the gain here. Then as you do your automation here, your final mixing can still be done over here without messing with your automation. If you want to be able to adjust the velocity of your MIDI parts, make sure that your volume velocity on your instrument is turned up. It can go as high as 100%, or you can back it off a little bit for a little bit less dynamics. Once this is done, you could come in here to your MIDI clip and highlight any note and then adjust the velocity level. You'll be able to get more dynamics out of your parts. So there you have it. Over 101 Ableton tips in Ableton 11. Go ahead and put in the comments what your favorite tip is. If there's an Ableton tip that I've missed, go ahead and drop that in the comments as well. And make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon.